Thank you. Well, my name is Monica, and before my coming here, I got aware that some people would be very disappointed if I didn't show a aircraft film. So I don't want to make anyone disappointed, so please enjoy. It's not really a 7 o'clock commercial on the TV. But Griffin is our main product. We have some other products, of course, but they all were about military or security and safety situations. I won't be talking about Saab very much because this is a PLM conference, so I will be talking about PLM within the operations of Griffin. And if you want to read more about Saab, you're welcome to do it on saabgroup.com. I think that part of our success is that while our business challenges require capacity and increased capacity, we have to see to the fact that our development environments are developing at the same time. Also, we have to have high efficiency, not only in product development and not only in product manufacturing, but also in our partnerships, our tools, everything all around, all the environment, the development environment. We also think that we have to think about PLM in a new way from now on, especially now when we have a new product being developed. I will be talking a little bit about the position that we started from. It's about 10 years ago, we introduced Teamcenter Enterprise as PLM platform. And Peter was talking about platforms, and that's good, because these PLM systems are platforms. But platform is something that is stable, something that when you want to write a manual letter, you need a table. When you want to sleep, you need a bed. But when we're talking about changing PLM systems, we change platforms. And this is the case for us today. We're changing a platform while we're working on a new product. So while we write the letter, we're changing the desk. And while we're sleeping, we're changing the bed. And I think it's important that we think that we should take it easy and be very aware of what we do. On our Teamcenter Enterprise platform, we have PLM abilities that serve the Griffin CD, that's the former generation of Griffin, but also abilities that serve the Griffin E. And those are the board decisions, the configuration control, the change control, development planning, technical documentation, unit processes, maintenance requirements, and so on. And the Teamcenter Enterprise platform is still evolving to provide new benefits. We're looking into integrations, both within Saab and outside Saab, integrations to partners, problem reports. We're thinking about how to deal with the visibility issues. Since this is a PLM system, of course, we have the issues with access control, and we always think about access control as company confidentiality, the military classification, the export control classification, but still, we have to look at how this data is dealt with when we work with partners or with suppliers. When starting our Aras journey, we made some observations. We think that the operational work when developing a product belong together with the evolving of the PLM system. You can't do the one first and the other second. You have to do them at the same time. And it's kind of working in a way that you try something out, check out if it works for the operations, and then you go back and produce some support for that in the PLM system. You go back again, look at it one more time, and then you change something, and then you go back. There are very small iterations just to make this work very, very well. And I don't think there ever will be a PLM system that works out of the box. I think they always have to be customized, because the customization is developing the development organization. And I think this improvement is essential for a business. And also that it never will be finished. We will never be ready. It's a never-ending story. It is a fact that Teamcenter Enterprise has no end of life, but it's a platform that is not developed anymore. We get no new features, and it's an old product. And we're looking into a new PLM system. We were aware of that we need new areas, new PLM abilities. We would like to have an easier workflow. We would like more collaboration platforms. We would like to have flight testing and configuration management of that, not only of the aircraft. Preparation and instructions for maintenance, consolidation of data when going out to customers. And we asked ourselves some questions. How do we get there to the place where we have a new platform and we don't lose all the investment we've made? Because customizing Teamcenter Enterprise was a large investment, and the abilities we have there, we want still to have them. Can we have two platforms, at least temporarily? Not forever, but during a period of time. Would that change things? Would that make it easier? How should we do? Should we develop new PLM functions in Teamcenter Enterprise, or should we do it somewhere else? Are there other platforms that can work together with Teamcenter Enterprise? Would we gain new benefits, like reduced costs in the future, or better solutions? Or would we be able to do things we have not done before? And we looked into Aras Innovator. Of course, we looked into the other PLM products on the market too, but this was the choice. And we stated that it was adaptable, it was open, it was secure enough, it was upgradable, and still developing. We liked the business model, the architecture, and we knew that there were experiences from solutions with coexisting platforms. So now I think you see where I'm heading. I can also add that the PLM core at Saab is in the development organization. It's not in manufacturing, it's in the systems engineering. So it's in the place when we work with the as-designed structures. And I think for that target, that Aras will give us a future-proof PLM solution, and that it will enable a gradual adoption into new PLM abilities. So how will we be doing that? We always develop new functions using the Aras platform, especially when the information does not to be linked into Teamcenter information. But when it does, then we have some choices, some different ways of making that work. Of course, there has to be an adapter between Teamcenter Enterprise and Aras, and you have to be able to work with Aras objects in Teamcenter and Teamcenter objects in Aras. We also want the major user groups only work with one interface, either Aras or Teamcenter. We think that it will feel quite messy if you do it differently. But I think also that when we have a larger business case, then we can take the objects out of Teamcenter and make them live in Aras instead, and in that way make it grow organically from Teamcenter into Aras. I will have a small example. Well, when John was talking here, he said that the part was the center of his map, the capital of his map. I'm from the computer sciences engineering, and I would never choose part, but you know, we're different. For me, it's this configuration item node that is the center. Such an object is a holder for a system of systems, or a system, or a subsystem, or as a leaf, as equipment, or parts, or software, or combination of software and hardware versions. And being on the MBSE breakout session, I have learned that it's present in Aras and looks like a little light purple snowflake, and it's called logical system element. So now you know that, but on my slides, it's just a blue dot. So the blue dots, they are structures of system elements, and the product configurations are baselines of those. The equipment, or document collections, or software, or maintenance requirements are the leaves in the system structure. So that's what is present in Teamcenter Enterprise at Saab and has been for the last 10 years. How do we see when we have new abilities, when we have need for new abilities, new PLM abilities? In this example, we have a need for a material resource specification. That is a specification for a tool, for example, repairing the aircraft or gluing some things together or something like that. And it's a description of a tool. That tool can be represented by an equipment existing in the aircraft today, or it can be bought somewhere else. The important thing is that you buy something that is according to the specification. It's also related to a procedure, working procedure. How do you deal with this tool? So when it's implemented in Aras, it's then related to a technical document in Teamcenter and added to the structure. And in future, we see that perhaps the next time we do something in Aras is to move all the realizations from Teamcenter to Aras. And yet another time to move the configuration nodes. That would be typically how we want to do it. And I think I can see Aras heading into that direction. And I think if we combine the MBSE and the variance functionality, I think we will end up in the right place for Saab, at least. So I will come back to this federation between Teamcenter and Aras. But first, something about the PLM landscape. In our PLM landscape, we have several PLM systems present. Actually, all of them, if I'm to be honest. And I think that's nothing we can do anything about. But we have to learn to think about it in a different way. So we have asked the operations, the organization, about the PLM objectives for next 10 years. And we ended up with these 5. The ability to carry information, ability to perform parallel development, collaborate between disciplines, and I mean here engineering disciplines, how to modularize design, thinking of blocks of design, reusable products. I think we've been hearing that today, earlier. Ability to collaborate with partners and suppliers. That's nothing new, really, but it needs to be there. And we considered that we have to do 3 primary PLM boosts in the organization to make it happen. First, how to work with consolidated product information. Then how to work with parallel development, and then how to work with effective communication to make those 2 first happen. When I say consolidated product information, I mean that making a product information created available for others, for the other engineering disciplines. So if you work with requirements, they need to be present for the software development and for the airframe development. If you work with verification, you have to have relations to the requirements and to the system structure. When you work with the functions, the system structure is a realization of that function structure. If you want to manufacture something, you have to have a realization structure. And in the end, you have to have an individual structure. And you have to have changes in all these structures. So they not necessarily break down structures, all of them, but they all relate to each other, and they are all structures. If we want to work with the consolidated information, I think we have to look at the fact that the different engineering disciplines, they need their own tools. They need their own tools of excellence that make them best. Just this discipline at this company to make the best effort they can. And I think they need different systems, and these will be different PLM systems. But I still want to have the consolidated information in a PLM backbone. And for us, that PLM backbone in future will be Aras, and for now, it's both Teamcenter and Aras. How much information is to be propagated from the front ends, the operational PLM systems to the backbone? I can't really say that, but there is a handshake to be made between the engineering disciplines. Somewhere we have to say, this is enough information for the other disciplines, and nothing else has to be propagated. But there is a line, a handshake to be made. So if we look at the different engineering disciplines present at Saab, you see the structures again, even here. And the requirement definition analysis, the architecture and design, and software development are often called the MBSE part of development. They are not the same. There are different disciplines. They work differently. They have their own tools. And of course, we know since ages that the airframe, the CAD, is the discipline of its own, and the electrical and the system integration also. And I want the data to flow between the front-end systems into the backbone and back again, and be able to be related to each other in here in the backbone. Then we have to look at the parallel development. I have an abstract example here. If we have a requirement structure, and it consists of both functional requirements and non-functional requirements, then the functional requirements, they relate only to the functional structure. But when you make an instance of this functional structure into a system structure, you will have the non-functional requirements related to that too. When you want to verify the function in the system structure, then you will have relations from the verification structure into the requirements and then to the functional structure and to the system structure. In that way, it all will be working together. And every one of these structures has to be handled separately and must be handled in parallel, just like software. But we have to do it with structures in the future. Oops. It's not easy to make it happen, and I think the effective communication will be necessary for this. And having so many PLM systems on site makes it impossible in understanding what data is moving from one system to the other. So we think that we will be needing an information model, an abstract information model that will contain all the information handled at Saab that is system independent. So we have to look at the information that we handle in a system independent way. Then we, of course, must be able to translate that system independent information into the system information because that's where it resides. But that we think would make it easier to move between systems and know what objects, what information is moved. We also need an integration platform, so we don't integrate the systems so they are integrated point to point. That's perhaps pretty obvious, but it's not the way it works always. We want to have an integration platform when one system leaves the data, the information, and it's mapped into information structures of another system, and then it's moved to that system. Always. So we can upgrade the systems separately and they don't interact and disturb each other. I've written here neutral formats. What I really mean, what you should read into this is the standards. Standards are very good, but actually there are a lot of them. And every supplier with some self-esteem has their own standard, and that makes it less good because you have to handle the problems. Like, it often becomes a bit religious if you are OSLC or STEP. And we would like to be able to transform the information with the help of the information model automatically into the standard of choice. So if we have a system with some information in it and it's defined by the information model, then we should be able to rework that information into a standard of choice. That's at least where I think we will be heading. So, I'm jumping back into the federation ideas. And if you think of the different structures, they often live in different PLM systems. Here you have different domains with different systems within those. And if you think that you add an Aras domain into that, it will have to cooperate with the rest of the systems. And perhaps we start with some structures and some information in that, relate that to other systems, and it will grow, and eventually we will be able to remove some information from other systems and put it into Aras. And together it all ends as a product. I think to make these coexistence ideas work, we have to understand our applications. We have to know what information is suitable for every application, for every PLM system. I think we have to know for ourselves, because it looks different in all the companies. And we have a reflection from the ACE in former years that Aras is often used in a coexist situation. And it's easy to communicate. It's possible to make that work. How to federate the objects? Well, it can be done in different ways, and we have done it in different ways for different objects. Either you have no instance of that object in Aras database. You just show the information from other system in Aras. And that is done to make it easier for the user. Or you use information from other systems in Aras. So you display an object from another database in Aras, and you add information in Aras to that object, but you only store the additional information. Or you encapsulate information from another system in an Aras object. In this way, you can use those objects and relate them in structures in Aras. We try to work with, we try to use the communities, both Aras communities and the C# communities, and look at a lot of coding examples. Some examples of those. And of course, there is a choice of where to connect in Aras. Either you do it in the client tier or the resource tier, or somewhere in the middle, and in that way you get a coexistence system that is either using the logic and rules from both systems, but has a lower performance and is less stable, or you have to implement the access rules and logic in both systems, but you have higher performance and higher stability. We were looking into some technologies of how to make the connections. And we looked also into some coexist difficulties, because there are some, like what happens when you do things in either the first or the second system. And often you have to look at the whole picture, how it works to create objects, update, delete, and so on, but also how the systems behave, what you do with them. I think also that we're quite anxious to make our development in Aras the Aras way. So when looking into the how our Aras systems are built, We also use the Lego platform way. We have some basis for an installation, Aras installation, with the rules, vaults, logging, file access. But we add functions of choice, like small applications for export control, for markups, for rendering, for integrations, and we have different user interfaces. So instead of always using the Aras interface, we have applications for Office client, for the Innovator client, of course, for file upload, for navigation. And if you look, this is an example from Griffin, and if you look at some other example, we use the basis and the markups. In this case, we mark up PDFs or raster files. We render some things, we have the export control, and we have integrations to change management system and parts structure system. And we have user interfaces like the Innovator client and Office client. We try to simplify our building environments using a lot of auto-testing. And we want to implement functions over different platforms. And how it is done, I think we try to work in a Kanban way. This is an example of how it could look when we have a backlog board, a backlog of the user stories to be implemented, and how these are moving through the development process. I don't think this is very different from any other development situation. We also try to not be only configuring Aras. We try to implement stable production environments for the PLM system, both Team Center system and the Aras system. And that leads us into the working with test-driven development. That works in a way that we, to start with, create tests of how we want the application to work, then we implement the code, and then execute the test and make it pass, hopefully. We want to have a very clean interfaces and a maintainable system. That's our main priority, because these systems live very, very long, and it's very easy to put some errors when you just configure them. That gives us some benefits. We hope it gives us less development time. You never know. But we have, using this test-driven development, we get a test libraries. And with the application evolving, it gets harder and harder to make it work properly. And having a lot of units tests helps us to keep it stable. It adds a lot of automation to the development too. There is a reason for that. How is my time? 5 minutes? All right. Once upon a time, we were working in this way. We have an architect team that's working with the operations. We have a development team And we once in the past had a test team. These were interacting with each other. So architects were writing user stories that were developed and tested, and the feedback loop looked like this. Of course, we tried to have some automation into that, but the feedback loops were quite long, so it could take, when looking at the development environment, you have a feedback very quickly if you work with that. If you work with a daily build, you have a bit larger loop. And if you work with weekly builds, it gets a week in between the bug reporting and the development. So in that way, we had a lot of end-to-end tests, some integration tests, and very few unit tests. With Teamcenter Enterprise, this was the only possible way to do it. But when we started working with Aras, then we thought we should do it in a different way. We have an architect team still, we have a development team, but all the tests are made by the developers. So now we have with test-driven development, we have a lot of unit tests, less of acceptance tests, and very few user interface tests. And the whole environment is a little bit simpler. So I think that all these efforts we have made to look into the PLM abilities that we need for the next 10 years, the efforts of looking at Aras architecture and trying to combine it with our own development, making the Aras code like components with system functions. I think all that will lead us into a new PLM platform in some years' time, because it will gonna take some years. And I hope that it will work well. I think that's all from me, and I wonder if you have any questions, or you can ask them later. All right. Thank you.